everyone, it's Roxy. Oh my gosh, guess what? I have some big news. Huge news. Well, as you can see by the title, pretty obvious, kind of gave it away there. But I bought my first home recently. It was quite the journey and the process. It is the first home that my husband and I have ever owned. So I've been requested to make an episode talking about my experience and to kind of share what tidbits I learned throughout the process. So here we go. Let me give you 6 advice and potentially a lot more little nuggets of advice in here, but 6 main advice. So I'll get right into it. Number 1, choose the right real estate agent. All right. My agent actually listens to my podcast. Her name is Sandra. We've been really good friends. She's one of my best friends from high school. So we met back in high school and we've stayed in touch ever since, even when we haven't lived in the same city. It always feels like we just catch right back where we left off whenever we see each other. And now we live in the same city. So it worked out perfectly. I know she has really wanted me to buy a house. Like every time I see her, she's like, when are you going to buy a house? When are you going to buy a house? And I'm like, okay, here I go. I'm finally buying a house. Here's your chance, Sandra. Find the right person. I would not want anyone else, honestly. If you're like me, you might know a few people that do real estate. A lot of people get into it as a side job or a second career, and it doesn't hurt to help support whoever you know that might have been a friend or a family member that got into real estate instead of choosing maybe someone that you just saw on a bus bench ad or their name is listed under Zillow. So I recommend getting someone that you actually know or someone that you know has recommended to you, and that way you know that you can really trust them versus just someone that you see on a website or on an ad and you really have no idea who they are. Which, by the way, I was talking to my neighbor when I was living at our apartment still, and he's also a real estate agent actually. And he was telling me that the listed agents under Zillow aren't even the right agents. Like they're not even apparently the selling agent of that house that you're looking at. That is news to me. I always thought if you were looking at a house on Zillow, then that whoever agent is listed there is the one you should book an appointment with. But apparently, and I could be wrong, but that's what he told me, is that that's not even real. Like, I guess they maybe make an ad or they pay Zillow to put their name on it. But he says that there's been times where he has been the selling agent of a house and it's not even him that's listed on there. So it goes to someone else if someone is interested in buying that house. Well, anyway, so don't go off of that. I wouldn't go off of just, oh, I found a house on realtor.com or on Zillow.com. So let me go ahead and make an appointment or reach out to this agent that's listed here, because it might not even be active. And I'd rather make sure to find the agent first versus finding the house. So just ask around. I'm sure you'll find somebody that has a real estate agent license, and choose someone that will have time also to take you around, because it was really time consuming. You can ask my agent. We went around, I would say almost daily or every other day. We went around and we saw 1 to 3 houses in any given day. So it would be after work, we would make an appointment, and usually the houses are booked on the first day that they're out on the market. And we would get the very last time slot, and we would line 2 or 3 houses up next to each other like that and go see them all in one day. So total, I want to say we probably saw 25 to 30 different homes. I'm not exaggerating. And it did take a lot of time every single day. It is going to take some time. So you want to pick someone that you know that will have the time and dedication to take you around. Sometimes it felt hopeless because you just keep seeing house after house and it wouldn't work out. But thankfully, my agent was very patient and she was very prompt. As soon as I would text her like, hey, let's go see this house today, she would respond immediately and confirm appointments. honestly, my husband was really good about looking for the homes. I was at work and didn't really have time to flip through Zillow and all that, but he was really good about it. I think between his work breaks and when he was home, he would be looking through Zillow pretty much all the time, and he would be the first to know when a new listing popped up, and then he would send it to me right away, like, hey, look, this just came up, or hey, this listing is only less than a day old. And then my mom would look for me as well. So I had eyes helping me to scour for new listings, so I didn't really have to do that. And we both pretty much kind of have the same idea of what we want. So George and I had a good idea of the type of layout, and we both wanted a one-story home, and his deal breaker was if it didn't have a garage. So we kind of agreed on a lot of the things that made it a lot easier for me to just let him look, and then I'll just say, okay, cool, let's go see it. It looks fine to me online. When you go to the house in person, sometimes it looks way different than the listing. My point is, find someone that you trust and has time and is prompt at responding to you and great at texting and really great at communication that can take you around looking for homes, because you will be seeing a lot. You may get lucky and land the home that you want in the first 5 homes that you visit, but for us, it took us like 20 to 30, at least 20. It was probably closer to 30 homes that we toured. And then something else I relied on my agent a lot for is how to get creative with my offers. So these can be things like offering a faster closing time that the seller agent and the seller, the owner of the house, looks for. That it just honestly depends, because we tried different strategies for different homes. There were some where we offered super high, like 25,000 above asking price, and it still didn't fall through. So there was something else that they were looking for, apparently, you know? And then there were some offers where we would try to give a higher earnest money or give a full waiver or a partial waiver. And those are things that you can really rely on your agent to help you understand. Don't be afraid to ask too many questions, which is what I did. I felt like I had to understand all the intricacies of the offer letter before I signed it. So have frequent talks with your agent to just be on the same page about the details so that there's no misunderstanding later. Like, well, wait, I didn't agree on that. Like, what do you mean? You know? So earnest money is something that you put down, like, let's say $1,000 to $3,000 on the higher end. There's really no given amount, but if you do get the house, it will apply toward your down payment. So you're not losing that money. It's just saying, hey, I'm legit on my offer. I'm not just putting 3 different offers at the same time on different houses, because if you put down earnest money and then back out of your offer, like let's say the next day, like, hey, never mind, I like this other house better, can we withdraw our offer? Well, you could lose that earnest money that you put down. So it's not something to be taken lightly, but I went ahead and whatever house I knew I really, 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 really liked, I went ahead and just put a lot of earnest money down, because it makes your offer look better. And the seller realizes, hey, like, you're actually serious about it. And as long as you have no potential regret of, oh, shoot, I don't want this house anymore, then why not? So the only time you don't want to put a high amount is if you're like, oh, I still want to kind of see my options. I kind of want to just offer this to see what happens, but I'm not that set on this house. Then don't put a lot down. I mentioned the full and partial waivers. So the full waiver is, let's say, the appraisal, which is something that you need to do before closing. Let's say your offer gets accepted. You need to do an appraisal, and the appraiser will evaluate how much this house he or she thinks is worth. And let's say they said that the house is not worth as much as what the owner is asking. Well, if you gave a full waiver, it means that you're still willing to pay what you offered. And if you give a partial waiver, it means you're willing to pay what you offered up to a certain amount that it gets evaluated at. And anything in between the actual appraisal cost and what you offered, then that you're not willing to pay. So that's what a partial waiver means. And those are things that I kind of asked a lot to my agent to really understand and really know what strategy to go with on your offers. And like I said, sometimes you can put a lot above and give the full waiver and give high earnest money and a fast closing time, and you still don't get the house. It happened to me a couple times. And the funny thing is, the house that we got, I didn't do all that. Actually, we didn't go super aggressive. And then in the end, it was still the one we got. So it just honestly depends. You think that you're going to get a certain house because you're being so aggressive. And it may just not, the timing may just not be right. The owner might be looking at other things. And I've had other friends that tell me too, like my husband's friend, just because he was military, he had a lot of offers fall through because of the VA loan, but the house that he bought, they were ex-military, and when they found out that he was military using the VA loan, they actually accepted his offer, and it was a lower offer than some of the other ones they received. So it honestly just depends who is selling to you and how creative your agent gets with the offer letter. So that was like the bulk of the technical stuff that can be talked about, which is all grouped in my first advice to you. Is it all starts with your agent, really, because I trusted my agent so much and we already had a great relationship. It went pretty smoothly. Now, I will say I have heard of other friends of mine that tried to use their friend as an agent and things didn't go really smoothly, but if they're a good agent and they're responsible and they're good at communication, then you should be fine. So I highly recommend using a friend as your real estate agent. Okay, number 2 of my advice is picking the right lending officer. So this is either a bank, a credit union, a mortgage company that basically is the entity that finances your mortgage and helps you lock down interest rates and helps you with all of your documentation for closing date and all of the details and the business jargon, really, that no one really reads. So my lending officer was recommended by my agent, and they've worked together and they have a good working relationship and they communicate really well with each other. And he would work till late at night, and he was really good at answering my phone calls and emails and really great at explaining things in a patient way, even when I had like a lot of questions, because it's like so foreign language. A lot of this is so new and people don't talk about this stuff and these weird fees and escrow terms and whatnot. So the lending officer I had such a good experience with, and I just felt like I always had someone to ask for complications or to explain concepts to myself and my husband. Now, I reached out to a couple other places also beforehand because they always say to, shop around. I did reach out to a credit union and another mortgage officer that someone had recommended. And it came down to the fact that, well, the credit union, no one was working that day from the, I guess, department that I needed, or it's just protocol for them to have my application, but then they would take 1 to 2 days to get back with me. So it just took the matter of them waiting a day or two to get back to me versus the lending officer that I use that took my application in the same phone call when I called on an evening, on a weeknight. And so that just made the difference to me. And the other independent agent that I had called that someone recommended to me, he just straight up didn't answer me back. So like I called, I texted, straight up nothing. Yep, I gave it a few days too. Nothing happened. So that person just never responded to me. So it came down to this person that I chose responded to me really quickly, got things moving along, highly recommended from my agent, and he was very trustworthy and very easy to understand when he explained things and hardworking. And I just felt like relaxed that he was taking care of all of my details, financial details when it comes to buying a house. Also, the company that he works for, it's not a certain bank or credit union. They basically look for the best deal for you. So they can look for mortgage lenders from any bank or entity and show you what the best rate is. So that's what happened. And he basically picked the best bank that would be funding my, or actually, I don't even think it's a bank. I think it's just a company. But he did pick at the end the best rate that I could get with my mortgage. So I liked that component too, going through him, that he was able to search for the best rate for me. So I didn't have to do that part myself, basically. And with his mortgage company, they had different team members. So even if he wasn't available, I could have reached out to anyone else that was in his team. So that was such a blessing to me. And then the third tip I have is to start early. I hear of people telling me like, oh, my apartment rent is going to be expired or my lease is going to end next month, so I'm going to look for a house now. No, that is not enough time. I'm sorry. Unless you want to drive yourself to a wall and be stressed out and stress your agent out, do not give yourself a month, okay? Even with the crazy market right now, I know how fast, I'm sure you've been hearing compared to a few years ago and pre-COVID, how things were a lot slower back then. Now things are moving so fast. And I've seen that by experience. Houses get snatched up within the day, okay? A lot of the houses we saw, they were sold within 24 hours or the first 3 days at least. I know that it sounds like it's going fast, but the whole process of closing, it takes at least a month to 2 months. And then I would say it takes you at least also a month to 2 months to find the house that you even want. Because like I said, we saw so many day to day, and not everyone has time to be going to see houses every single day after work. And your agent might not be able to even get a hold of the appointments because of houses no longer being on the market and cancellations. You really have to give yourself a lot of time, a head start. We had about 5 months, I think. And I could have started even later. I was waiting for kind of the 3-month mark, but we saw some houses online about 5 months before the end of our apartment lease. So we were like, oh, let's just go ahead and start looking, even if it's at a couple houses to start with, just to kind of see what we like. So that's my advice to you too, is give yourself time to just find out what you like, especially if you're buying with a spouse or a partner. You guys really have to be on the same page of what type of structure, what type of house you're looking for, what kind of layout, what kind of colors, small yard, big yard, condo, townhouse, or an actual home, the neighborhood, distance to both of your works. So those are things that really take time, and you don't really find out until you're seeing it in person. Surprisingly, I had a couple of my offers beat out by people that lived out of town and didn't even come see the house yet. And they offered on houses that they had not even seen with their eyes, but just by seeing online. So I don't know if they were investors or just loaded or what, but yes, that can happen. If you're like me, you take your supplementation game seriously. Sapling makes plant-based vegan vitamins and supplements that I think you'll love. They even plant a tree for every bottle purchased. Almost 120,000 trees have been planted so far across 8 countries. Plus, Sapling is plastic negative certified and remove twice the amount of plastic from the environment as their product contributes. Use the link in this episode's show notes or the code MFMP for 10% off your order at takesapling.com. That's TAKESAPLING.com. You got to give yourself enough time to get on the same page. If you have a family, how many rooms is it going to have? Is it going to be enough for your family? Is it going to be enough for your pets? Even if you're buying a home for yourself, you might still learn things like, oh, I thought I didn't need a garage, but now I think I would like one. Or I always wanted a 2-story home, but now I'm feeling like it's going to be too much trouble walking up and down. And my grandparents might visit every weekend, so that won't be as safe, So those are all things that you really won't notice until you're actually putting yourself in this home. And instead of just looking online, you're never going to get that experience. And one thing you could do before you reach out to an agent is go visit some open houses on your own. That you don't need an agent with you, and you could just go without making an appointment and there is a page on Zillow that only looks for open houses scheduled around your area. I think I just Googled it, and there's like a specific search page or filter you could put for open houses. We didn't find too many because the houses in El Paso, my agent told me that pre-COVID, we used to have about 2,000 houses on the market. And when I was looking, there was, what did she tell me, 250 or 400? Several hundred only. So it was slim pickings at the time that I bought. And even now, I still think the inventory is just not there. So we didn't see too many open houses. We went to maybe 2 or 3 only because they were kind of hard to find. I wish there was some better place that it would just tell you all the open houses happening on any given day, but it was kind of hard for us to find. And sometimes we would only see it listed in that particular listing somewhere in the description. It'll tell you open house from this day to this day, from this time to this time. So if you do see that, you're welcome to go on your own without an agent, and you don't even have to knock on the door. You can just go right in as long as there's an open house scheduled. Funny story. This house that we got, we actually first found it as an open house, and we didn't ask our agent to take us because it was an open house. So we came on our own. It was eerily quiet in the neighborhood, okay? There was no one parked outside. I think there was one car in the driveway. So we were like, okay, maybe this is the agent. But there was like no signs. There was no signs for open houses. Sometimes the agent will put an open house sign or tape it to the door, but they don't always. But you could still try to knock on the door if they don't have a sign. Sometimes they just don't put a sign. But most of the times they will put a sign for open house. And in this case, there was nothing, but it clearly said on Zillow that they had an open house that day. We rang the doorbell. Nothing happened. No one came to the door. And we were just like, okay, let's get out of here. There's no one here. They lied to us. Catfish. We were catfished. We were first originally catfished by the home that we currently live in now. Later on, we find out that it was sold and put back on the market because I guess something fell through with the first offer that they accepted. So yes, from the time that we found it as an open house, it had been since then sold. Then something fell through, then relisted about a month later. And then that's when we put in our offer. And there was 2 other offers competing with mine, but it was a lower amount than we were used to. The other houses we were offering had at least 7 or 8, sometimes 16 different other offers that you were competing with. So I felt pretty good about this one because there was only 3 offers total. And we did get the winning offer because we had put, I think, a 30-day closing, and the owner was really eager to get out of the country and sell this house. And because they already had a delay with the first deal falling through, you can imagine they were probably really looking forward to selling it to whoever had the shortest closing date. So that's kind of what happened with us. That's why I say it's a funny story, because we were originally catfish and there was no open house when they said there was an open house, and we didn't get to see the house, and we didn't even like it from the outside, just looking at it, honestly. I mean, even now, honestly, the house we got doesn't have the best curb appeal, but we are slowly working on it to make it look a little better each day. It's just coming slowly and little by little. But yeah, those opportunities can come up where there was a house you originally wanted and then it's gone and then it might be put back on the market. So it could happen. Similarly, there was a house where we really liked. It was our favorite house up until this one that we put an offer in. We put above asking value. We did a research, like my agent did a market analysis of the neighboring houses in the neighborhood at how much they were listed and how much they were actually sold for. So that's another thing you can ask your agent to do on a house that you're really serious about getting. So you can kind of gauge how to offer, because you don't want to offer too low where it's not competitive, but you don't want to offer exceedingly high either where there's no reason for it. And then you end up overpaying. So we did that and we felt really good about an offer we placed on another house we really liked, but we didn't end up getting it. And it was honestly a big shock to us because we thought we were going to get it. And then guess what? After some time, we noticed that the for sale sign was up again in front of that house that we had wanted. So then we were like, you see, they should have just went with our offer because we would have been good on our word and it would have, the deal would have actually closed. So it could happen. It could happen where there's a house you liked, you offer, you don't get accepted, and then it gets put back on the market again. But we don't regret it. We like the house that we currently got. Well, after that one, we got rejected. But then we were able to kind of sneak in and steal this one. It wasn't expected at all, but it worked out for us in the end. So be prepared for unexpected things to happen, I guess. All right. Fourth advice is make a decision fast. So like I was saying, things were just flying off the shelf. So if you know that, okay, I'm sure that I like this house, put an offer right after you see it. So your agent can have offer letters drafted up, and all you have to do is correct some of the numbers, the logistics, earnest money, whatnot, and your offer amount, and sign it. So it's an E6, so they'll email you the offer letter, and you send it in. So if you know you like a house, and you know you're still going to like it tomorrow, don't wait. Don't be like, well, let's see it again. No, just put the offer in that same night after you see it. And I wish it wasn't the case, but unfortunately, that's how it's like now. A few years ago, you had time to wait. You had a few days or even a couple weeks to kind of ponder and really, make a offer after waiting some time. But that's not how it is anymore. I'm sorry. I wish it wasn't the case. It was, kind of frustrating and a lot of pressure for me too when we were going through it. But that's just how the market is right now. So if you really want a house, you got to make a decision fast. Okay, advice number 5. So I did just say to make a decision fast, but my 5th advice is don't be desperate. But why you got to be desperate though? Okay, make a decision fast, but don't be desperate, because then you could end up getting something you don't like. So don't put yourself into that trouble. If you have some second thoughts about the house you're looking at, like there were some houses where I feel like I'm more open and positive and hopeful, as in, well, we can make, changes and we can make repairs and upgrades and whatnot. But my husband is better at looking at the fine details of the house. So he'll notice things that I don't. Like there was a tri-level. Okay. It's funny because I don't like 2-story houses, but I feel like I am okay with tri-levels, which is so backwards because why would I want 3 stairs? Or I guess 2 sets of stairs, but 3 levels. But I just feel like, well, the stairs are shorter and you get more room to play with. You get the front part where it's just on the bottom floor. You get the kitchen, the dining room, which is in the middle. And then you can walk back downstairs to the back of the house, which is again on the first floor. Or from the kitchen, you can walk upstairs and access the bedrooms. I just think tri-levels are kind of funny and quirky. And I don't know. I don't feel like it's cramped, but I have heard that some people think they're cramped because they're tri-level, but not the 3-story homes, like the Spanish style. We toured a townhome that was Spanish style and it was 3 stories and very narrow, That is not going to fly with me, okay? But the tri-level, at least it kind of looks more cohesive. It all looks like kind of one thing, at least. Where was I going? Why am I talking about tri-levels? Oh, yeah. So there was a tri-level we saw, and when George was standing in the kitchen, he noticed that the floor was a little uneven. Like if you were to roll marble, maybe it would not stay. It would probably roll in one direction. And see, I didn't notice that. And I think he also said that the floor felt really thin, like you can fall through it. And I didn't notice that either. And then on the outside of the house, he just said that the words he used were, it looked like the house was falling apart, which I did not agree. But I think he just felt like the structure, the integrity of the house, the wall next to the garage just could have been better, I guess. So those are things you should watch for, and why it helps to take someone with you. Your mom, take a friend, take your neighbor. I mean, your agent will be there as well, but you still want to take someone else to see what they catch and you don't. So those that, like that house, for example, I probably would have regretted if I made an offer on it and we actually got accepted. So don't be desperate and weigh your options. Make a fast decision if you know for sure that you like this house and it's good and it's not a fixer-upper unless you want a fixer-upper, but we did not want a fixer-upper, okay? So that's it. Just remember, don't be desperate. Okay, and then my last advice is have fun and enjoy the process. It's supposed to be a fun thing to be house shopping. It's not supposed to be something stressful. If you're like me, I've always enjoyed touring apartments. We've always lived in apartments since college and my master's and even moving back home. I've been working for a few years, but we've still been living in apartments up until now. And I always enjoyed the process of touring apartments and seeing their pools and seeing their fitness center and seeing the different layouts they have. Just like that, just like touring for apartments where there's no stress and there's just possibility and imagination and just enjoy the time that you are seeing the houses. Of course, don't take too long and be too indecisive because your agent might not want to work with you anymore, but be proactive, but enjoy the process. Don't be a nutcase about it. Don't be so stressed out about it. There were times where I had to remind myself to take a few days of break in between seeing houses. And this house we found when we were out of town, and my mom went to go see it for me with my brothers. So it definitely came at an unexpected time. We weren't even planning on looking for houses because we were obviously out of town, so we couldn't. But they video chatted me as they walked around, and it was good to me. It looked good to me. Of course, it's not perfect, and there were things that were a little bit concerning to us. But from the most part, it looked doable and it looked acceptable and adequate to what we were looking for, and the neighborhood was fine. So that's the biggest thing, is the neighborhood. There were some houses where I just felt like it was loud, a lot of dogs barking, and there was always commotion, cars driving in and out. And that was something I looked at a lot and I put into consideration. But with this house, even though George and I were out of town, when my mom FaceTimed me and showed me the front yard, and I didn't hear any noise. I saw a nice sunset. There was a sunset view, and I didn't hear any dogs barking or like cars driving up and down the street. So that made me feel at ease enough to where we made the offer without seeing it. But as soon as we came back, actually, right when we arrived at the airport, when we came home, the first thing we did was go see the house. So we made sure that we still liked it after seeing it in person, which I did. And I love sunroofs, and this house comes with 3 sunroofs. Some people don't like sunroofs, but I've always loved them because it just lets a lot more light in, natural light, without having to use light bulbs. Enjoy the process. find people that you can trust to help you through the process, talk things through. I was calling my mom and my agent all the time, just talking things through with them. Like, okay, well, how should we go about this offer? What do you think about this house? Do you think it's really worth this much that they're asking? How many repairs do you think is needed? Oh, adding back to tip 3, which is starting early, you do want to give yourself enough time because you are going to need to do an inspection that the buyer, which is myself, the buyer will have to schedule, which my agent gave me some numbers. So I scheduled an inspector to come and give you a report. And then from then you can argue for any closing costs. So in the past, sellers would pay for the closing cost. However, the whole real estate market is just cray nuts right now. So you're expected to pay the closing costs if you're the buyer now, for the most part. What I did was I was able to use the things that were listed on the inspection report as a reason to argue for them to pay for some of the inspection costs. And then, to pay for some of the closing costs. And it actually worked. So they were able to pay a little bit of the closing costs, which is not too bad because a lot of the times the seller won't pay any of it. So that's something to expect. Termite inspection, that's optional if you want to do. And I also ran into an issue with the appraiser who was just taking so long on doing the appraisal. It actually delayed our closing date by a couple weeks, which was a little stressful. Not to me, because again, we weren't in a hurry. We still had a couple months left in our apartment. So it's not like we were to be out of a place to live. And that's why I say start early. You don't want to end up in a situation where you have to pack up all your stuff and move in with your mom or put all your stuff in a storage locker. So you don't want to put yourself in that situation. So even though our closing date was delayed, we still had 2 more months left on our rent. So we felt pretty secure the entire time. We didn't ever feel like, oh my gosh, are we going to be out of a place to stay? So the appraiser worked really slowly and even asked for more money towards the end just so he can go do his job. And unfortunately, that's what had to happen for him to do his job. So that's a little hiccup we ran into that delayed our closing date. But other than that, everyone else worked really, really quickly. The inspector, the lending officer, my agent, we all worked really quickly and smoothly to get everything done. We really could have finished all of the closing in under 30 days if it wasn't for the appraiser issue. But in the end, the appraisal came back slightly higher than the asking price of the house. So that was good news, and we were happy about that. As you can see, there's a lot of complications and issues that can come up, and those are just kind of a surfacey level of topics that I'm divulging to you. Of course, I'm not going to go into the grimy details, but for the most part, it was a really fun experience for us. We learned a lot. I know I did. I learned a lot through this process. I can give you these suggestions and recommendations from my own experience, but just to be expected that anything can happen, and my situation and experience might not be what will happen to you, because I've heard just so many stories of people having their house delayed for months even, or the owner of the house not being able to sell after all because of a life event. So then you lose out completely on the hope of getting that house, and you have to start out over and you have to move in with your mom. Like I said, I've heard of that happening. So just be patient, have fun. That's the biggest thing, is give yourself enough time. Don't rush through it, because then you risk the event that you're going to make a desperate and rash decision. All right, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you want to hear more or have a specific question that I did not get to touch on, because the whole home buying process is complicated, I understand, I will be posting a prompt to ask me additional questions on my Patreon, patreon.com/MFMP. It's going to be a public post, so even if you're not a paying patron, you're able to access the post and send a comment to me and give me any additional questions that you want to ask or your own experience with home buying. I would love to hear your experience. And if you do become a patron, you will get 3 days early access to all of the posts on my Patreon, including this one. So you can be the first to ask a question or leave a comment that I can address at a future episode. So that way you just have a bit of a head start to it if you do become a member as a patron. So thank you everyone for listening. I hope you had fun going through this home buying journey with me. Bye. Thanks for listening. You can now drop me a voicemail that might be aired in a future episode. You'll find the link in my Twitter and Instagram bios at MFMP Pod. Subscribe to my YouTube channel by searching Many Faces, Many Places, all in one word. Lastly, make sure to tap the follow button on your favorite podcasting app to stay tuned for new episodes.